Thank you so much for coming out on this Tuesday. We're really excited. So, a catastrophic event has plagued our world and threatened the existence of mankind. In this scenario, many of the world's scholars have already been wiped out, but 10 are left, and they all work at UR. The UR professors have crashed on a remote island, and there's only one raft to make it to safety. Each will argue on behalf of their discipline to take the one place on the raft. The audience's task is to choose which discipline deserves to survive to save humanity.
So to begin, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Gardner Nash. I am a senior. I'm part of the RCSGA.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you, Monica. VP of Administration, I'll be one of your moderators here tonight.
I'm Sarah. I'm chair of Senate of WCGA. We're really grateful for all of you.
And now, without further ado, our survivors. To begin, we have from the accounting department, Professor Joe Ben Hoyle. Joe Hoyle. Next up, from biology, we have Dr. Shannon Jones. From the economics department, we have Dr. Chadwick Curtis. From environmental studies, we have Dr. Mary Finley Gross. From history, we have Dr. Chris Fishkoff. From leadership studies, Dr. Jessica Flanagan. From philosophy, Dr. Jeffrey Buda. From political science, Dr. Stephen Long. From physics, Dr. Jack Single. And our final hope is from religious studies, Dr. G. Scott Davis. Please don't fall off our raft.
The debate format will be as follows. We will proceed down the panel alphabetically by discipline for each round. Round 1, each professor will get 2 minutes to pitch their discipline as the most vital to be saved. Round 2, each professor will have 2 minutes for a rebuttal, and round 3, it'll be the final minute closing speech.
So to begin with round 1, we would start with Dr. Joe Hoyle on the end. You'll have 2 minutes going down the line. At 10 seconds, we'll raise our hand to give you a warning sign. We'll begin when you start.
I think we're good? Okay. You ready? You ready? Yeah. I am absolutely thrilled to be here tonight to help give you advice on one of the most important decisions you will ever make, saving civilization by deciding who is going to get on this raft. But I already know that you're not going to need advice. It is going to be so obvious that you will automatically know which of the 10 of us should get on that raft. But I want you to focus on one word, because one word is clearly what you need to know. And that one word is survivor. Because why put somebody on a raft if they're not going to survive? You want somebody who will survive to go on and recreate civilization. Now, we're lucky, and that is that we have a role model. There is a creature that is the world's greatest survivor. And that creature is going to provide us a role model to help you choose which of the 10 of us is going to survive. And that creature that survives everything, of course, is the cockroach. And I want you to know, and I want to tell you this right now, accountants have all of the best characteristics. Don't encourage me too much. For example, cockroaches are tenacious. Accountants are tenacious. Cockroaches will work night and day. Accountants will work night and day. Cockroaches will eat anything. Accountants will eat anything. But the key is this, and this is why cockroaches have always been able to survive. They are the world's greatest at procreation. And that's what you're going to need. Procreation. So I'm here to tell you why you should vote for me. And that is, accountants are just as good at procreation as are cockroaches. And I will challenge everybody here at the table to tell you, to look you in the eye and say that they're better at procreation than cockroaches. And if they don't do it, they don't get on the raft.
Kind of hard to follow cockroach procreation, but here we go. So, as was stated before, my name is Dr. Shayla Jones. I'm a faculty member in the biology department. And the definition of biology is the study of life, study of living things. So, who you want on that raft is the person that's going to increase your survival, increase your chance of continuing life. And we study life at the microscopic level, all the way up to the organismal level. And so if we're in an apocalypse, this is the end of the world, who do you want on that raft? Someone who's going to treat infectious disease, because that's probably what started the apocalypse, some kind of zombie apocalypse, right? So who do you want to cure infectious disease? Who do you want to help find antidotes for poisoning? Because at this point, we're going to be foraging for food. There are no more grocery stores, no more restaurants, so you're going to be foraging. How do you know what's safe to eat? So if you happen to eat something poisonous, I'm a toxicologist, by the way, you want someone who can figure out the antidote. So if you're lying, they're dying, who do you want on your side? I'd say toxicologist. And then mentioning procreation, what's required for procreation is some knowledge of biology, right? So again, to save the human race, you gotta know how the parts fit together, when to carry out that key action that's going to lead to procreation, and who else to help you other than a biologist. Also, we're in an apocalypse. You might get a little gloomy from time to time. What's going to help? Maybe indulging in some beverages made through fermentation by yeast, right? So who knows about fermentation? Biologists. So without biologists, you wouldn't have kombucha, right? Like kombucha, right? You wouldn't have beer or wine. So that's my argument. Why you need a biologist on this life raft?
All right, I'm Chad Curtis. I'm from economics, and I just want to let you know that it was a close call. We dodged a bullet because you have the ability to save humankind by voting economics onto the life raft. So the first thing I want to just note before we start off is that there's two disciplines represented by the B School here, and you're going to want to choose economics. Sorry, there's going to be a little bit more to saving the world than balancing checkbooks and fighting tax laws. But what economics is it's really the study of the efficient allocation of scarce resources, right? And so from an efficiency standpoint, the first thing we're going to do to save the world is we're not saving the UR registration process. Hundreds of students pushing at the same time at 8 a.m. to get classes, not efficient. We're letting that one burn. But what economics does show us is that the motivator of economic activity is having the ability to pursue self-interest, and that's where economic success comes from. Do something that you're interested in. And this happens at the individual level. Individuals decide what they are best at and where they can make a contribution. I mean, you don't make a masterpiece in art by telling someone to go make art. The inner artist finds themselves. The best scientists don't come from someone saying, go make some good science. Actually, the best scientists come from someone who realizes they have the ability and passion to pursue science and be successful at it. And so what economics shows us is that everyone can make a contribution. It's just, you gotta find your place. And so with this impending mankind's disaster, what economics can do is help us find the place where people can have the ability, the passion, to make their contribution to building the New World Order. It's pretty that simple.
Hi, I'm Mary Finley Brook, and I'm here speaking for environmental studies. So we do need to get a little bit serious. We do need to think about survival, and that's why environmental studies was created. It was created for the survival of humans and created for the survival of all species. So we think about big picture. Biologists may focus on the narrow aspects of fermentation, they may focus on narrow aspects of living species, but we really need to think about the environment as the living and the non-living. We need to think about how we harvest our forests, what we do with that lumber once it's extracted. We need to think about the oceans, it's more than 70% of the earth. We need to think about those resources and those organisms that can't speak for themselves. Environmentalists are your Loraxes, they are your voices. We speak for the trees, they are living things, they may not be able to speak for themselves. But I also want to talk about where we would even be if we didn't have environmentalists. So we need to think about those environmental resource management that would come from the raft. Are we going to have wood? Are we going to have bamboo? Is there even going to be a raft? If you don't have environmentalists, you may not have a raft. Are you going to float on water? Did you think about the scarcity of water? Without environmentalists, you may not have water to put on your raft. But more importantly, with the most fundamental crisis that we all face, which is climate change and sea level rise, think about that island and that raft and we're heading, we may not even have the island, we may not even have a future. So we do want to think about that big picture environmentalism. We want to think about how it addresses everything from the economics to the social impacts to the political impacts to getting at how we work together, what is most important to all of us. It's the earth, it's our relationship to one another, it's thinking about how we're going to make a difference for the future, and that's what we get from environmental studies. We bring together those big pictures, we think about how we're going to be here in the long run, and I will save the rest for the next.
All right, well, I wasn't planning on going here, but since we've been talking about procreation, let me show you my calf. Okay, so in order to procreate, you have to be attracted to somebody else, and what's attractive varies over time. In the wake of revolutions and upheavals, what's attractive changes. In the late 18th century, it was calves. Historians study everything, every discipline, every domain of knowledge, including environmental history. So if you want to go big, we'll go even bigger. But to get to my sort of planned remarks, right, if you don't have a historian and you don't have academic history, it'd be like getting thrown into an unfamiliar landscape filled with volcanoes and raging rivers and waterfalls and nests of wild critters that want to eat you and organic chemistry professors who want to give you midterms unannounced, right? Historians can offer you a high-level map, right? We have studied why people behave the way they do, why and how political systems work and fall apart. What leads to wars and what can be resolved peacefully. When the best of intentions can lead to the worst of results, and when the best of people seemingly will stand by while atrocities are committed. Now, other disciplines can offer you, frankly, a more detailed, higher resolution map of a very, very narrow slice of that landscape, but we're going to give you the big picture.
Hi, I'm Jess from from leadership. So we have the big picture, but we don't have the biggest picture. If you are saving a store, for example, for the apocalypse, are you going to save CVS or Corks and Kegs biology? Or would you want to save Target, which has everything you need? It would have life rafts, and it would have whatever else you would need for your pursuits. It would have a little bit of everything and the best of everything. And that's what the leadership school is. Other disciplines have had their shot. We probably got into this mess because of a failure associated with recognizing history or economics or something to that effect. But now, here's a new school and a new idea. A little bit of all of the disciplines, a kind of greatest hits. So if you could only save like 12 songs from all of Ariana Grande's work, would you save the top 12 or would you pick one album? You would pick the top 12, right? If you could only take one tool with you across the apocalypse, what would you take? A Swiss Army knife or a corkscrew? You would take the leadership school. Leadership not only teaches you instrumentally valuable things like biology through our Science Scholars program, or economics, or history, we've got all of that. Argumentation, which everybody's using here today, is something we learned in the leadership school as well. It also teaches you something that's beyond all of these instrumental uses, which is how to live a meaningful life. So the thought about the leadership school is, yeah, we have a lot of instrumentally valuable skills. You can learn about social science, history, philosophy, leadership as it is, as it was, as it should be. But it also teaches you how to worship at the shrine that your own hands have built. And that's where we should rebuild from, place of meaning. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jeff Godric from philosophy. Love crowd already. Philosophy? Are you kidding me? Philosophy? That's that court you would have to apologize to your parents if you went home and said you were going to major in philosophy, right? I mean, what? The discipline that takes seriously that the chairs they're sitting on might not be real? Water might not be wet? What? Of course water is wet! Well, wait, I grant that if you douse your clothes in water, then you'll be wet, but I'm not sure the water itself is wet. Oh, philosophy, you gotta be kidding me. Let me tell you a story. In the beginning, there was ignorance and the struggle to survive. And somewhere, incrementally, slowly, when our ancestors had perhaps a minuscule amount of free time, they began to wonder about their world. Why are the trees there and not there? Why is this little cockroach not dying? Why? And so began the search for meaning and understanding in the universe. That philosophical urge to ask why. All is water, Thales. All is number, Pythagoras. All is little bits of matter, Democritus. All is substance. All is spirit. All is the mind of God. All is one-dimensional vibrating strings. We've got answers for all the possibilities. Aristotle was the key to education for over 1,000 years, regardless of whether you're reading the Bible or the Quran. All those scientists that you know, Descartes, Leibniz, those guys, they were all natural philosophers in the 17th century. That's what they were called. Psychology, sociology, bought off from philosophy in the 18th century, and I've got them all.
Thank you. I'm Stephen Long from political science. We do have a lot of majors on campus, so that helps in something like this. So I think the real question is, do we just want to survive? Or do we want to build? Do we want to rebuild our civilization? And you need to pick the person who is best suited to help you rebuild civilization. All of the accomplishments in human history were driven by politics. Now, Joe, I know we're going to need to count sometime, but right now we only need to count to one. The survivor. And I know that beer is going to be important in the future, but do you really think politics could ever happen without alcohol? We'll get there. We'll get there. We don't need someone to do the actual distilling work. Chad, of course, there's a reason we call econ the dismal science. So ask yourself, how can we rebuild without politics? Yes, it can be disappointing. Yes, it can be frustrating at certain times. We admit that. But without politics, we would have never gone to the moon. We needed NASA, we needed the space race to do that. Without politics, we would have never cured some of the worst diseases out there. Yes, there are biologists in the lab doing the work, but the labs would never have been built. The agenda would never have been set without politics. Politics is how we set our priorities as humankind. Without politics, all of these fields will run off into the future by themselves. Can you imagine if we left the world to economists? What's that going to look like in 100 years? I think I know. So I ask you to think not just about the day-to-day survival and what plants and what wood we can make the life raft out of. What comes next? What comes after? If you want civilization, you need politics.
Don't fall off, please.
All right. I will divide my remarks about physics into two parts. One I hope is obvious, and the other part may be less obvious. So for the obvious part, do you like the lights being on in this room? Do you like electricity and running water and all the things they do for you? Do you like all of your appliances? Do you like your communications technologies? Do you like central heating and air conditioning and all those things? In short, if you like your showers hot and your beer cold, you're going to need physics in your future world. So now for the less obvious part. Physicists are the world's problem solvers. So you may not be aware that the person who first identified that a single molecule must be at the heart of genetics was Erwin Schrödinger, a physicist. Inspired by his work, a generation later, people discovered the structure of DNA. Those people were in a physics lab at Cambridge. The person who developed the architecture that all computers are based on from the beginning to this day was John von Neumann, who was trained in physics. And the first person to win the Nobel Prize in economics was Jan Tinbergen, who was a physicist. So if you save physics, you will not only get your lights on, your showers hot, and your beer cold, but you will also eventually get biology and economics and computer science and probably everything else.
The first thing I've realized is I need to conserve energy in this. I'm not standing up. And the second thing I have to say, and I say this with a heavy heart, with a heavy heart, my colleagues are all charlatans. Because they know as well as you know that all of our disciplines now are so collaborative, so interrelated, that no single human being is going to bring them back. The Academy is already doomed. Fortunately, because you poor bastards are in the midst of a cataclysm, you're gonna be bummed out. You're gonna be wondering, what kind of world is this? What kind of life can we make for each other? How should we live in the aftermath of this disaster? And that, my friends, is simply the beginning of religion. You don't need me. You're going to do it yourselves. And frankly, our hosts haven't told us how good an island this is. I don't even know if I want to leave. So I am, in the face of this cataclysm, more than happy to sit on my island and see what happens and let you guys rebuild the world. Because after religion, there's Plato. After Plato, there's Aristotle. After Aristotle, there's all the rest of the disciplines. You don't need any of us.
Thank you so much for all of these very persuasive arguments. So for round 2, each professor will get a chance to have a 2-minute rebuttal, starting back at the beginning.
You have a very difficult decision to make. And you're making a decision to determine how we're going to save civilization. But I want you to know, even before I start, that I have complete confidence in your decision-making ability. And the reason is that every single year since I first came here, the admissions office has told us that the incoming class was the brightest group ever to walk on this campus. So therefore, without a doubt, you guys are the brightest people in the 100 and how many ever years Richmond's been here to actually be here. You're capable of making a great decision. All I want to do is to draw your attention to a couple of facts. One of those facts is that I started off by challenging my colleagues to look you in the eye and to tell you that their discipline could procreate every bit as better than a cockroach. And you know as well as I do that not one of them did that. Now they talked about procreation. We heard the word, but nobody claimed they could do it. You know why? They're not confident. They're not confident that this is really going to happen. And you can't put people on a raft who don't have confidence. I'm so confident that I have already designed a flag for civilization. And this flag is going to be our inspiration once we get off the island and survive. We will look at this flag every day, and it will help us to have the confidence that we can go on. And in closing, if they don't have a flag, we know what that means.
To get distilled down about fermentation and beer. So I just want to spend some time talking about exactly why I love to come to work to do this job every day. Why am I so excited about biology? And just FYI, there's only one cockroach on that flag. So sort of whatever that means. So again, back to biology. It's the study of life, yes, but it's also how living organisms interact with their environment. And again, thinking about the life raft and the apocalypse, yes, climate change is one of the biggest threats to civilization, but also infectious disease and antibiotic resistance. So if you're thinking about how are we going to get past this apocalypse, you have to think back to prior to the invention of antibiotics, where a single cut or drinking contaminated water, that's a 100% certainty of death. And that's where we'd be again in this apocalypse. So again, how do we survive? As a biologist, our job is to make an observation about the world around us, the living world, and come up with a systematic approach to solve that problem. And so again, if we're thinking about the biggest threats to global health, not just climate change, infectious disease. So if you're on that raft and you get a cut, or if you're on that raft and the water's contaminated with some bacteria, fungus, who do you need to help solve that problem? So yes, we need all these wonderful disciplines, but how can you build this new society if you're dying of a fungal or bacterial infection? Also, beyond that, what are we going to need? We need genetics, we need physiology, we need ecology, again, studying the world around us. We need to know how to prevent this apocalypse from happening. Again, we need to understand how humans are evolving in response to changes in our environment. So not only do we want to survive, we want to prevent this from happening again. Who do you want on your side? Someone who understands the nature of natural selection, someone who understands life at the microscopic level and at the whole organism level. So again, not to just distill my comments down to microorganisms and brewing, but thinking about the biggest problems that we're going to face in this apocalypse can be solved with biology.
All right, so I just want to tell you a little bit about where we are so you can kind of see the future when you save economics. As I said, economics is the study of the efficient allocation of scarce resources. So except in times of war or strife, which is caused by breakdown in politics, of course, people have the resources to make it. Listen to this is amazing. So over the last 40 years, infant mortality rates have fallen in every single country, every one of them. And we've seen that life expectancy over the same amount of time for every except a couple of countries has increased over the same time. And most so in the developing world. We now have more people on this planet than any time in human history. And the only reason, and people are living longer. And the only reason this is possible is because people have the resources to survive. So there's this, Darwinian concept of natural selection, right? The strongest survive and the weak perish. Actually, modern humanity is a little exempt from that, to tell you the truth. We don't exactly see that. We are a social animal, right? We help each other out. The weak, the strong. Our grandparents, our kids are all making it. And I mean, think about this. Like, look no further than me. My skill is economics. It's not exactly a survival skill in the wild. So, I mean, and here I am. I pounded, a half a dozen tacos at a taco truck bar at D-Hall today. And I'm not a survivor yet. I'm surviving. This is the efficient allocation of resources where we can do it. And this is what economics shows us. We can all make it. And economics also shows us that this growth and economic progress is not a zero-sum game. Your progress is my progress.
I found it really interesting that so many disciplines are claiming their breadth, but really fundamentally when you come down to it, environmental studies is the only class that bridges, the only discipline, the only field that bridges the natural sciences, the social sciences, and the humanities. We're in every single discipline, we're all across campus, we're relevant to every single topic that you talk about. But when we go back to how old these disciplines are, yes, we can talk about religion, but we also need to go back to, and you teach, of course, you've taught Native American history and Native American spirituality and environmentalism. That's the basis of environmental studies. We think about 7 generations. We think about how long we're going to be here. So we may be a new discipline in a new field, but we're based in those ancient teachings, and we're linked to everything. The thing that really surprises me about the claims of all of these other fields to do things that are considered environmentalism is the way that they come at it in very narrow and segmented ways, whereas environmental studies looks at the connections between all of the disciplines. We look at how it fits together, we look at that big picture, and so we're trying to think about how to problem solve, but we're doing it in a way that you can really take the best of each one of the disciplines. You can take your environmental history, you can take your green chemistry, you can take your environmental economics, you can take your environmental law and policy. Again, we're covered in each one of these disciplines. We talk about environmental leadership. We talk about your environmental ethics, which is the foundation of it all. And so you can't separate environmental studies from every single topic that's out there, every single topic that's part of our future and the way that we move forward. And so this is a bridge science. This is a bridge science that brings it all together and puts it in perspective and understands how we fit together from the local to the global. We haven't really talked about other countries. We haven't really talked about responsibility to the world. I'll get there in our wrap up.
Is it okay if I rebut myself, actually? And this has nothing to do with the procreation thing. History is just the worst. Okay. History as a discipline was born in the late 19th century. It was part and parcel of this rising nationalism. It helped to justify this sense of superiority that led European empires to push outward, 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 led America to push westward, 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 committing horrible atrocities in the process. It led to the nationalism that fueled the First World War. It led to a complete distortion and misremembering of the past in the United States that led to Jim Crow, that led to basically the mentality that gave us Monument Avenue, among other things, right? So historians failed. We failed to get things right. We failed in our ethical duty. But we remember that. Every historian in the discipline could recount all of our failures. We know how bad we are. We don't trust ourselves. We really don't. Hubris. That's probably what, in one way or another, got us into whatever disaster that has led us to be on this remarkably small island. And there is no discipline like history for puncturing the sort of self-satisfied confidence that so many disciplines seem to have. So that's what we need, that sort of curmudgeonly historian reminding us that, it's not going to work out quite the way we thought. It's a lot more complex than that. Let's plan for every eventuality. You'll hate us, but you need that.
If I were to be stuck on an island with these folks, it'd be all right. But let me just tell you a little bit about what's different about leadership. What does it add? Don't follow a flag. Think for yourself, right? Like, if you want to think about, like, what is it all for? What's the purpose? What are we here for? What should we think about, like, our role in the world? That's the kind of thing that we're talking about at the leadership school. And so, in some sense, it's a way of reconciling two perspectives that are both true about our lives. The first perspective we might call the view from the self. So internal to your own perspective, when you're thinking from yourself, your birth is the most significant thing that's ever happened in the world. It's the beginning of the whole universe. And your death is literally the end of the universe. It's catastrophic. It's the worst thing possible. Not to, like, bring me down or whatever. It's gonna get worse. And then from the view of the universe, none of this matters. Like, the end of humanity, like whatever, everything, it's just a blip. It's just a grain of sand. And like, this is the truth about your life, and it's like a deep truth that we kind of ignore, but we all have to live with all the time. Now, how do we reconcile those two perspectives? How do we reconcile the perspective of internal to my life, I have all these plans and projects and goals and things that are so important to me, but then external to my life, like, I just seem like my own self-interest, my own self-oriented perspective is so insignificant. The way that you reconcile that is by thinking in a way that takes into account ethics and effectiveness. And that's what we focus on in the leadership school. So what do you want your life to be about? How do you reconcile these two perspectives that are both true? Ethics and effectiveness are ways of sort of managing that tension in our lives. And that's what I think that is new about the leadership school and how we think about leadership. Thanks.
So the philosopher's been getting squashed for 2,500 plus years, and we're still here. And we're going to keep going, I promise. I want you to think about what philosophy can give you. Imagine this. Imagine that when you're not just saving one of us, I mean, we're all great people, that's fine, it's good to save at least one of us. I imagine, though, that you're not saving just us, but we carry with us the complete works of our discipline. All of accounting, all of history, all of political science, all of philosophy. All of it. Philosophy of science, philosophy of mathematics, philosophy of psychology, philosophy of race, death, sex, drugs, rock and roll. I can give you all of this in philosophy, because we do it all. First physicist was a philosopher. So fear not in the choice you have to make. What you lose today, you will gain again. Philosophy is the all-mother, the all-father. It contains within it the seeds of all of these. And what you lose today, you will gain again through philosophy.
So, thinking of philosophy, well, I have to admit, I dozed off for a moment there. Somewhere, I don't know, somewhere around leadership studies, and then I woke up at the end of philosophy. Really, this is a life and death situation. There's no time for navel gazing, for wondering about whether the chairs we're sitting on are actually there, whether they're a construct of our minds. That's all lovely, but this is life and death, people. And if there's anyone who knows about things that are life and death, it's the people who do politics. Right? Every day we make decisions that are life and death. In fact, speaking of philosophy, dear Aristotle told us that politics is the master of the disciplines. His words, not mine. Convenient, though. It's the master of the other disciplines because it sets order to what would be irresponsible searches for knowledge and truth and perhaps money. We know what happens when we let the physicists just go off and do their own work. We know what happens when we let the biologists go off and do their own work. Is that catchy? I don't know what the accountants do when they go off to their own work. The point is, without politics, none of this behind me will matter. It will wander off into the future. So I ask you, who are the real survivors in our world? They're the practitioners of politics, right? If you can pick one horse to bet on, it's politics.
I may get a bit critical in my response round. I think some of my colleagues have not fully reckoned with the prompt here, that there's been a global scale apocalypse that's wiped out all of humanity and everything except this one little island with this small number of people. So, accounting. There's no taxes, there's no government, there's no banks. Case over. Environmental studies, and I'm a huge sustainability person, but climate change, it's already happened. The trees are gone, the lions are gone, there's nothing to save. There's one island in the whole world, as I understand it. History. All the records are gone, all the statues are gone. What are you going to study? There's nothing to base it on. economics. To allocate resources, we need stuff. All we have right now is a raft. And to continue from a point I made before, the Black-Scholes equation, a fluid dynamics equation, Black of Black-Scholes, a physicist. We can get economics back if you say physics. Let's see what else. Religion. We have no churches left. We have no buildings left. It's a sad state. All we have is a raft. We're going to have to harness the sun and the wind and the rain. That's it. And physics. No, not save those things. Harness those things. Thank you.
I don't think that my colleagues have addressed the fact that their disciplines are now doomed, and so there's no reason for them to go back. I don't think that they've addressed the fact that this is getting to be a better island all the time. So we might as well all stay. And at this point, I think that the strategy should probably be, why you shouldn't send me back. Please don't. I don't want to have to deal with the chaos and the misery that Professor Singal has just described. It's beyond the pale. So I will yield the rest of my time, as short as it may be on this lovely little island, to enjoy the coconuts. Thank you.
Wow, I am rethinking my major already. That's a bad thing for a second semester senior to say. So we're going to go into our third round. It's going to be one final minute to close out your arguments, starting again at the end.
No flags. Wasn't that disappointing? Didn't you want to see another flag? What I'm about to say is this. This is my 48th year as a college professor. I have taught in college longer than most of these people have been alive, to tell you the truth. I have taught so long, I can read college student minds. And I want you to know that's a very weird proposition. Here's what I know. I know in your mind, most of you really want to vote for Team Cockroach, but you just can't quite pull the trigger. So I want to read to you one quote that addresses this whole issue so that you will feel comfortable even though you're not an accounting major voting for the accountants. And it says this, and this comes from a global environmental expert. It says, the global biodiversity crisis is so severe that brilliant scientists, political leaders, eco-warriors, and religious gurus can no longer save us from ourselves. The military are powerless, but there may be one last hope for life on Earth, the accountants.
So in my closing remarks, I'm not going to bash any of the disciplines. I deeply respect my colleagues, but again, I just want to focus on the joys and intricacies of biology. So when I think of biology, really what I enjoy is the innovation. And in an apocalypse, that's what you want. And in biology, we push the envelope. So situations that seem hopeless and life-altering and life-ending can be ameliorated or made better by biology. So I think, again, back to life before antibiotics. Before Alexander Fleming accidentally discovered penicillin, again, people were dying from infection, a simple cut. And to think you can use fungus to treat bacterial infections. Again, innovation. Thinking life before vaccination, and that's a hot topic right now. But children were debilitated, crippled by polio, spending months in this iron lung, using, again, pieces of that pathogen, the bacteria that causes polio, to prevent polio. Again, innovation. HIV used to be a death sentence, and now people with HIV are living full, healthy lives. So again, innovation is key, and that's what you want on the Raft.
Now, my colleagues' words have been very convincing. You know, we need art to express our humanity. We need science to understand our world and to make beer. And we need business to facilitate and organize transactions. Now, economics is all of these. Think about the University of Richmond. You can major in economics business or economics, arts, and sciences. Economics is a business. Economics is a science. As a plug, I think in the fall it'll be designated as a STEM major. And economics is an art. So just, that's clear from the writings of a prominent author who's also a major in economics, Donald Trump. He wrote The Art of the Deal. So hence the art, right? What, not a good example? The point is this, is that if you think breadth is important, if you think that humanity's survival is going to need a little bit of art, a little bit of science, and a little bit of business, economics is your life raft.
So for closing for environmental studies, I want to make 2 points. And the first one I want to make, those of you who know sustainability know that it has 3 common elements. So we have the ecological aspects, the environmental aspects, and the social aspects. What I'm disappointed in the other disciplines that I've heard talking today is I haven't heard anything about social justice. So environmental studies include social justice. We talk about ecofeminism, we talk about environmental racism, and we address contemporary issues. And we pull that together with our 4th piece of that, which is governance or accountability. So really, environmental studies pulls together these different disciplines and holds it in context, and it sees how's it connected. The other thing I want to talk about is we are action-oriented, we are activists, we're doing things. No, I wasn't sitting around preparing my remarks for tonight, I wasn't ironing a cockroach on a flag. I was actually in a high school doing environmental education, talking to the next generation. That's what you get with environmental studies, we're changing the future.
So you've heard some great arguments tonight. If you really want to think all this through, that's going to be some hard, tough thinking. And it's too late in the semester for that. So take the easy road out. History is the true broad tent. We have to do the history of science and the environment, politics, physics, religion, and explain how it all comes together. We have the building blocks to reconstruct all of those disciplines. We aren't fully up to date with it, right? We might get you some 1950s style science, but it's there. We're the best cockroaches out there. If the world is squashed, we will help lots of different things survive. So rarely is the smart choice also the easy choice. In this case, it is.
So I've made the case that leadership includes the kind of greatest hits of a lot of these wonderful disciplines. But I've also made the case that it also provides people with an opportunity to think for themselves and build something new. These are all totally valuable pursuits. But there could be things that we've never even thought of questioning. For example, maybe one thing that I might be questioning later is the limits of democratic authority. Does a vote have authority over how we make decisions around here, for example? And just putting more options on the table that we haven't even seen. It's with this sense of possibility, taking with us all of the disciplines, but also bringing in a kind of free-thinking spirit and creativity to build something new that I think merits some support from the Leadership School. Thanks.
So let's talk about this very debate, the life raft debate. It's based on a philosophical thought experiment put forward by George Harding in 1974. He was using it to make a point about allocation of scarce resources, like 10 people in one spot on a life raft. So, if the very debate we're engaged in is a philosophical thought experiment, why is that? Well, I'm going to repeat a case I've made before. These are all my children. And like a good parent, I have let them develop over the years. Sometimes they haven't gone so well, but that's what you have to do as a good parent, you let them go. But the advantage of being a good parent is you can do it again.
Very nice. So many reproduction jokes tonight. Feel a little shocked. The point I want to make about politics is that it is the ultimate way to decide who gets what, why they get it, how they get it, and when they get it. In fact, that's the most classic definition of politics that's out there. And so, once the one survivor from this group steps on the life raft and returns to humanity to help rebuild, that person is going to be capable of making the most important decisions and teaching others how to make the most important decisions in a way that is perceived as fair and legitimate. And I'd ask you to think about how we plan on resolving this debate as an example of that. What's going to happen next? Right? First, one of us is going to argue not to leave the island. Then you're all going to vote. Right? A fundamental system of politics to make the decision. So I say thank you in advance for your support. And to my colleagues, your sacrifice will be remembered.
The world is almost entirely destroyed, and there are 10 people or whatever on the raft. We don't need fancy theories about how to run elections and instant runoff voting and all of that. A simple straw poll will do. We don't need to contemplate whether we actually exist or whether water actually exists. And if we did, well, there's always the example of T.S. Kuhn, who was a physicist who then made major contributions to philosophy. The government's gone, we don't have taxes, there's no banks, there's no environment to save. So, keep the lights on, keep the showers hot, keep the beer cold, rebuild technology, physics.
I realize that what we don't have amongst us this evening is a representative from English or Spanish or classics. People that I would really like to spend my time online. Because at least one of them will remember, I don't remember if it's Ode 9 or Ode 6 of the first book of Horace's Odes, where he says, sitting under the tree, without electricity or any of those other nice things, pass the wine. And he says, Carpe diem, et quam minime credere postero. Don't worry about what comes afterwards. Religion will reconceive itself, and we'll bring these other little guys around with us. But there's nothing to be worried about. So I'll leave it there.
So take a minute to think over who you're going to vote for as we get the voting apparatus set up. As you begin to vote, just vote by texting the number you choose. Oh. Text in 1 for accounting, 2 for biology, 3 for economics, 4 for environmental studies, 5 for history, 6 for leadership, 7 for philosophy. Wait a hot sec. For policy
somewhat ready. So, to begin, this raft is already starting to sink, unfortunately. So I need to throw a few people off. Those people who would not be joining us for the next round are leadership. Come on down. Environmental science. Economics. History. And finally, I'm sorry, we're not going to be drinking beer, biology. Now, before we announce our winner for tonight, I would like to quickly thank someone who helped to put this whole thing together, Megan, who is somewhere over in the side. Please give her a hand. She's done a lot to make sure this all went through this. So, a drum roll, please. We have no music majors up here, I can see. The one person who will go on to save humanity will be coming from the physics department. Thank you all very much for coming out to the first, hopefully, annual Life Raft debate. It was great to have you all here. Have a great evening.